He asked why I dressed up for girls' night. I joked, in case I meet someone better. He locked me out. Amara Clark lived in a cozy, sunlit apartment on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. Her home was a reflection of her personality. Warm yet polished, with soft, neutral tones accented by vibrant pops of color from carefully chosen art pieces and potted plants. At 32, Amara had built a life that many would envy, a successful career as a marketing consultant, a close-knit circle of friends, and a marriage to Ethan Foster, a software engineer whose quiet demeanor balanced her outgoing nature. But tonight, there was an undercurrent of unease in their usually peaceful home. Amara stood in front of the full-length mirror in her bedroom, smoothing down the sleek black dress she'd chosen for girls' night out. It hugged her figure perfectly, accentuating her confidence. She loved dressing up, not just for special occasions but for moments like these, when she could let loose and enjoy herself without worrying about work or responsibilities. Ethan leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, watching her with a look she couldn't quite place. "That dress seems a little fancy for drinks with your friends, doesn't it?" he asked, his tone casual but tinged with something sharper beneath the surface. Amara glanced at him over her shoulder, surprised by the question. "It's called having fun, Ethan," she replied lightly, turning back to adjust her earrings. "Besides, don't I deserve to feel good about myself once in a while?" He didn't respond immediately, and when she finally faced him again, his expression had shifted. "I guess I'm just wondering why you're putting so much effort into looking good for a random Thursday night. What's the point?" The words hung in the air between them, heavier than either intended. Amara felt a flicker of irritation but brushed it off with a laugh. "Oh, come on. Don't tell me you're jealous now. Maybe I'm dressing up in case I meet someone better." She meant it as a joke, a playful jab to lighten the mood. But Ethan's jaw tightened instantly. His eyes narrowed, and for a moment, silence filled the room. Then quietly, but with unmistakable bitterness, he said, "If that's how you really feel, maybe you should go find someone else." Amara froze, stunned by the sudden shift in his tone. Before she could respond, Ethan turned away, muttering something under his breath about needing space. By the time she grabbed her clutch and headed for the door, he had already locked it behind her. Standing alone in the hallway, Amara stared at the closed door, her heart pounding. What had started as a harmless comment had spiraled into something far more serious. As she stepped into the elevator, one thought lingered in her mind. How did we get here? Little did she know, this was only the beginning of a night and a conversation that would change everything. The bar was alive with the hum of conversation and laughter, a stark contrast to the suffocating tension Amara had left behind at home. She slid into the booth where her closest friends, Mia, Harper, and Rachel, were already seated, cocktails in hand. They greeted her with cheerful waves and teasing remarks about her glamorous entrance. But Amara's forced smile betrayed the storm brewing inside her. "You look amazing, as always," Mia said, raising her glass. "But you also look like you just escaped a war zone. Spill." Amara hesitated, fiddling with the strap of her clutch before launching into the story. She recounted Ethan's strange reaction to her outfit, the biting comment he made, and how it ended with him locking her out of their apartment. Her voice wavered slightly as she described the confrontation, though she tried to downplay its seriousness. "It's ridiculous, right? Just a stupid joke, and suddenly it's World War III. Harper tilted her head thoughtfully. "Do you think maybe he's feeling insecure lately? Like, not just about tonight, but overall?" Rachel chimed in, swirling her drink. "Or maybe he's projecting. You know how guys can get when they feel like they're not enough." Mia leaned forward, her tone softer now. "Have you talked to him about any of this? I mean, seriously talked, not just argued." Amara sighed, running a hand through her hair. "I don't know. We've been fine, or at least I thought we were." Sure, we've had our ups and downs, but nothing that felt this heavy. Her mind drifted back to the weeks leading up to tonight. Ethan had seemed distant, preoccupied. He'd snapped at her over small things, a misplaced coffee mug, a late dinner, and brushed off her concerns whenever she asked if something was wrong. At the time, she chalked it up to stress from work or his usual introverted tendencies. But now, sitting here with her friends, she wondered if there was more to it. By the time she returned home later that evening, the apartment was dark and silent. Ethan sat on the couch, illuminated only by the soft glow of the city lights streaming through the windows. His shoulders were slumped, his face unreadable. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Finally, Amara broke the silence. "Can we talk about what happened earlier?" Ethan didn't look at her immediately. When he did, his eyes carried a weight she hadn't seen before. "I'm sorry for locking you out. That wasn't fair." She nodded slowly, taking a seat across from him. "Okay, but why did you react like that?" "I was joking, Ethan. You know me. I wouldn't say something like that and mean it." He exhaled sharply, rubbing his temples. "It's not just about the joke, Amara. It's everything. The way you sometimes make comments about my job, about where we are in life, it makes me feel like I'm failing you." Amara blinked, caught off guard. "What are you talking about? I tease you because I care about you. I never meant to make you feel bad." "But you do," he said, his voice quieter now. "Like when you joked last month about how my career isn't as exciting as yours, or when you mentioned that your friend's husband just got promoted again and then looked at me like I should be doing more." Each word hit her like a punch, to the gut. She remembered those moments vividly, but only now did she see them through his eyes. To her, they had been harmless observations, part of the ebb and flow of their relationship. To him, they had been daggers, chipping away at his confidence bit by bit. "I didn't realize," she admitted, her voice trembling. "God, Ethan, I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you." For a brief moment, the air between them softened. Ethan reached out, his fingers brushing hers. "I believe you, but it's not just about one thing. It's all of it. And I think we need to figure out if we can fix this." As they sat together in the dim light, Amara couldn't shake the feeling that there was still something Ethan wasn't saying. His apology felt genuine, but his gaze kept drifting away, as if he were holding on to a secret too heavy to share. Whatever it was, Amara knew one thing for certain. Their marriage was standing on shaky ground, and the cracks ran deeper than either of them had realized. The days that followed were tense, though both Amara and Ethan made an unspoken effort to avoid reigniting the argument. They moved around each other like cautious strangers, exchanging polite but distant words over breakfast or during quiet evenings at home. Yet beneath the surface calm, questions lingered in Amara's mind, gnawing at her resolve to let things settle. Something about Ethan's confession, that he felt inadequate because of her offhand comments, didn't sit right with her. It wasn't just guilt or insecurity. There was a deeper current of resentment she couldn't quite place. And then there were the little things. His habit of disappearing into his office for hours, the way his phone buzzed late at night with notifications. He never explained. She told herself it was paranoia, a byproduct of their recent fight. But curiosity and suspicion tugged at her relentlessly. One afternoon, while Ethan was out running errands, Amara found herself standing in front of his desk. Her heart raced as she hesitated, torn between respect for his privacy and the need to understand what was really going on. Finally, she opened the drawer where he kept his personal documents and notebooks. Inside, she discovered a crumpled receipt from a counseling center, a place neither of them had ever discussed visiting. Her stomach sank. "He's been seeing someone? Without telling me?" Panic gave way to anger as she sifted through more papers, finding nothing else incriminating but enough to confirm her fears. Ethan had been seeking help, not with her, but alone. The realization stung. Was he planning something? Preparing to leave? Or worse, had he already started? When Ethan returned home later that evening, Amara confronted him immediately. "Why? Didn't you tell me you've been going to therapy?" she demanded, holding up the receipt. Ethan froze, his keys still dangling in his hand. For a moment, he looked like a deer caught in headlights. Then, slowly, he set the keys down and sighed. "I didn't want to worry you." "Worry me?" "Ethan, we're married. You don't get to keep something like this from me." "I know," he said, his voice strained. "But I wasn't sure how to bring it up. I thought, maybe if I figured some things out on my own first, it would be easier." Amara crossed her arms, her frustration mounting. "Figured what out? What exactly are you trying to fix?" Ethan hesitated, avoiding her gaze. When he finally spoke, his words came haltingly. "Us. Our marriage. I've been feeling like I'm not enough. For you, for us. Like no matter what I do, it's never going to measure up." His vulnerability caught her off guard, softening her anger just enough to let him continue. He admitted that he'd been struggling with feelings of inadequacy for months, even years. He confessed that he'd considered leaving. The idea had crossed his mind more times than he cared to admit. But he'd stayed because he loved her, because he hoped they could work through their issues together. "But there's something else," he added quietly, almost reluctantly. "I ran into Claire a few weeks ago." The name hit Amara like ice water. Claire, his ex-girlfriend, the woman he'd dated before they met. Memories of their early conversations about Claire came flooding back, tinged with unease. Ethan had always described her as part of his past, someone who no longer mattered. Hearing her name now felt like a betrayal. "What do you mean, ran into?" Amara asked, her voice tight. "It was completely by chance," Ethan insisted, sensing her growing alarm. "She works at a startup downtown, and we bumped into each other at a coffee shop. We exchanged numbers, but that's it. I swear, Amara. Nothing happened." Amara turned away, unable to look at him. His explanation sounded plausible, but doubt clawed at her trust. Why hadn't he mentioned Claire sooner? Had he truly reconnected with her only as friends, or was there more to the story? As silence stretched between them, Amara realized that Ethan's secrets weren't just about his insecurities. They hinted at a fracture far deeper than either of them had acknowledged. Whether it was fear, pride, or something else entirely, Ethan had been carrying this burden alone, letting it fester until it threatened to consume their relationship. And now, faced with the truth, or at least part of it, Amara wondered if their marriage could survive not just the cracks they'd already uncovered, but the ones that still lay hidden beneath the surface. The gala was in full swing when Amara arrived, her presence commanding attention the moment she stepped into the grand ballroom. She wore a sleek emerald gown that shimmered under the chandeliers, paired with heels that clicked confidently against the polished marble floor. Her decision to attend had been impulsive, a way to assert herself after days of feeling undermined. But now, as heads turned and whispers followed her entrance, she felt a surge of empowerment. Daniel stood near the bar, nursing a glass of whiskey. He'd agreed to accompany her at the last minute, though his motives were clear. For years, he'd harbored feelings for Amara, always lingering on the periphery of her life as a friend, but never crossing the line. Tonight, however, his gaze lingered longer than usual, his smile tinged with something more deliberate. "You clean up nicely," he said, raising his glass in mock toast. "Though I have to admit, I wasn't expecting this level of... wow." Amara laughed lightly, brushing off the compliment. "Don't get used to it," This is a one-time thing. Pity, Daniel replied, his tone teasing but laced with sincerity. You should let yourself shine like this more often. As they mingled with the crowd, Amara found herself relaxing for the first time in days. The music swelled. Conversations buzzed around them, and for a fleeting moment, she forgot about Ethan and the turmoil waiting for her at home. But then, as if summoned by her thoughts, she spotted him across the room. Ethan looked out of place among the glitz and glamour, his suit slightly rumpled, his expression unreadable. Their eyes met briefly before he approached, his steps hesitant but determined. Amara, he began, his voice low. We need to talk. She stiffened, instinctively stepping back. Not here, Ethan. Not now. I didn't come here to fight, he said quickly, glancing at Daniel, who hovered protectively beside her. I wanted to make sure. You're okay. I'm fine, she replied curtly, though her voice betrayed a flicker of uncertainty. What are you doing here? Before Ethan could answer, Daniel interjected, his tone dripping with sarcasm. Oh, don't mind me. I'm just enjoying the show. Tell me, Ethan, how does it feel to know you pushed her away so completely that she had to find someone else to take her out? Ethan's jaw tightened, his fists clenching at his sides. This isn't about you, he shot back, his voice rising despite his attempt to stay calm. And for the record, I'm trying to fix things, not sabotage them. The tension between the two men crackled like static, drawing curious glances from nearby guests. Amara stepped forward, her cheeks flushed with embarrassment. Enough, she snapped, glaring at both of them. I didn't come here to be some pawn in your ego battle. If you can't behave yourselves, leave, both of you. Her words silenced them momentarily, but the damage was done. Ethan's face fell, shame replacing his earlier resolve. He muttered an apology before turning to leave, disappearing into the throng of people. Meanwhile, Daniel watched him go with a smug smirk, clearly pleased with himself. Later that night, as Amara prepared to leave, Daniel caught up with her outside the venue. Are you all right? He asked, his tone softer now. That couldn't have been easy. She nodded, though her thoughts were far away. It's complicated, she admitted. But thank you, for tonight, for being there. He hesitated, then placed a hand on her arm. If you ever need someone to lean on, I'm here. Amara forced a smile, grateful for his kindness but unsure how to respond. As she walked away, her mind replayed the events of the evening, the confrontation, the embarrassment, the weight of Ethan's apology. She realized that while the gala had been cathartic, it hadn't resolved anything. If anything, it had deepened the rift between them. Back at home, the apartment felt colder than usual. Ethan sat on the couch, staring blankly at the wall. When she entered, he looked up, guilt etched across his features. I messed up again, he said quietly. Didn't I? Amara didn't answer right away. Instead, she sank onto the chair opposite him, exhaustion settling over her shoulders. Yes, Ethan, you did. And honestly, so did I. For the first time in weeks, neither of them spoke with anger or defensiveness. The silence between them was heavy, but not hostile, a shared acknowledgement of the pain they'd inflicted on each other. As Amara stared at the man she'd once vowed to stand by through thick and thin, she wondered if their love could withstand the storm they'd created, or if perhaps it was already too late. The morning after the gala dawned gray and overcast, mirroring the somber mood that hung in Amara and Ethan's apartment. Neither of them had slept well. The weight of their fractured relationship pressed down on them like an unrelenting storm cloud. When Amara emerged from her bedroom, still dressed in yesterday's clothes, Ethan was already seated at the kitchen table, nursing a cup of coffee. His eyes were bloodshot, his face pale, a stark contrast to the composed man she'd married. Morning, he said quietly, his voice barely audible above the hum of the city outside their window. Amara nodded, but didn't respond. She poured herself a glass of water, her movements deliberate, as if any sudden action might shatter the fragile truce they'd stumbled into the night before. They sat in silence for several minutes, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Finally, Ethan broke it. "I've been thinking," he began, his tone hesitant, "about everything. Us. Where we went wrong." Amara set her glass down and turned to face him, her arms crossed tightly across her chest. And I think maybe we've been too focused on blaming each other instead of looking at ourselves. He paused, gathering his thoughts. "I know I haven't been fair to you. I let my insecurities get in the way of being the partner you deserve. But I also think there are things you've said and done that hurt me, even if you didn't mean to." His words hit home, though Amara struggled to meet his gaze. She knew he was right. The casual comments about his career, the dismissive remarks she'd made without considering how they might land, it all added up to something bigger than either of them had acknowledged. "I never wanted to make you feel small," she admitted, her voice trembling. "But I see now that I did. And I'm sorry. Truly." Ethan nodded, swallowing hard. "Thank you for saying that. It means a lot. But what about Claire?" she asked suddenly, unable to hold back the question that had haunted her since their last conversation. "Is she really just part of your past? Or is there more to it?" He sighed, leaning forward with his elbows on the table. "Claire and we reconnected briefly because I was feeling lost, scared even. I thought maybe talking to someone who knew me before us, might help me figure out what I want. But it didn't take long for me to realize that she's not who I need. You are." Amara studied him carefully, searching for signs of dishonesty. What she saw instead was vulnerability, a raw honesty that reminded her of why she'd fallen in love with him in the first place. "That doesn't excuse keeping it from me," she said finally, her voice firm but not accusatory. "If you'd told me sooner, maybe we wouldn't be here." "You're right," he conceded. "I should have trusted you enough to share what I was going through. I won't make that mistake again. If you'll give me another chance." Her heart ached at the desperation in his voice. For weeks, they danced around their problems, avoiding the truth until it exploded between them. Now, faced with the possibility of losing him, or losing herself in the process of trying to save their marriage, she realized how much she still cared for him. But caring wasn't enough. Trust had to be rebuilt, brick by painstaking brick. "So, what do we do now?" she asked softly, breaking the silence that followed his plea. "We try," Ethan replied, his eyes meeting hers with quiet determination. "We go to therapy together this time, not separately. We talk about the things we've been too afraid to say, and we decide, for real, whether we can move forward or if it's better to let go." Amara nodded slowly, the enormity of the decision settling over her. Letting go would mean starting over, navigating life without the person who had been her anchor for so long. Trying again would require patience, forgiveness, and a willingness to confront the pain they'd both caused. Neither path promised ease, but both offered the potential for growth. As the rain began to patter against the windows, Amara reached across the table and took Ethan's hand. It was a small gesture, tentative yet significant. A beginning, or perhaps an ending, with no guarantees beyond the choice to face whatever came next together. For now, that was enough. Months passed, each day a step forward, or sometimes backward, on the winding road to healing. Therapy sessions became a regular part of Amara and Ethan's routine, their once stilted conversations gradually giving way to honest discussions about fears, frustrations, and hopes for the future. They learned to listen, not just to respond, but to truly understand. It wasn't easy. There were moments when old wounds resurfaced, when tempers flared and doubts crept in. But they persevered, holding on to the fragile threads of their relationship with determination. One crisp autumn afternoon, Amara stood on the balcony of their apartment, watching the golden sunlight filter through the trees lining the street below. She felt lighter somehow, as if the weight she'd carried for so long had begun to lift. Behind her, Ethan approached quietly, his presence familiar, yet comforting in a way it hadn't been for years. "Thinking deep thoughts?" he asked, leaning against the railing beside her. She smiled faintly, shaking her head. "Just reflecting on how far we've come." Ethan nodded, his gaze drifting toward the horizon. "It's funny, isn't it? How much can change without you even realizing it until you look back?" Their journey hadn't been linear. There had been days when Amara questioned whether they'd made the right choice to stay together. Days when Ethan wondered if he was capable of being the man she needed. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, they'd found their rhythm again. The jokes that once stung now landed softly, tempered by mutual respect. The silences that once brimmed, with tension now held space for peace. Part of their transformation came from learning to prioritize themselves, not just as partners, but as individuals. Amara threw herself into her career with renewed passion, taking on projects that challenged her and reignited her sense of purpose. Ethan, meanwhile, pursued side ventures that allowed him to explore his creativity outside the confines of his corporate job. For the first time in years, they weren't just surviving alongside each other. They were thriving. Still, there were reminders of the cracks that had nearly shattered them. One evening, while sorting through old boxes in the closet, Amara stumbled upon a framed photo of Ethan and Claire at some event years ago. Her stomach churned at the sight, but instead of retreating into suspicion or anger, she brought it to Ethan. "I found this," she said simply, placing the frame on the coffee table between them. Ethan studied it for a moment before nodding. "Yeah, that was during college. We were close back then." Amara hesitated, choosing her words carefully. Does it bring up anything for you?" He shook his head, meeting her eyes with unwavering clarity. "No, because what I have with you is different. It's real, and I don't want anyone else." Tears pricked at the corners of her eyes, not from sadness, but from relief. In that moment, she knew they'd reached a turning point, not because everything was perfect, but because they'd chosen to trust each other despite the imperfections, Winter gave way to spring. Amara and Ethan began making plans. A trip to Europe, volunteer work at a local community center, even tentative talks about starting a family someday. Their dreams no longer felt like separate entities pulling them in opposite directions. They were intertwined, shared visions of a life built together. On a warm June evening, they found themselves walking along the beach near their weekend getaway cabin. The waves lapped gently at the shore, the sky painted in hues of pink and orange as the sun dipped below the horizon. Hand in hand, they paused to take it all in, the beauty of the moment, the quiet strength of their bond. "We did it," Amara murmured, her voice barely audible over the sound of the ocean. "We actually fixed us." Ethan squeezed her hand, a soft smile playing on his lips. "Not fixed, exactly. More like remade, stronger than before." She leaned into him, resting her head on his shoulder. "Strong enough to last?" "Strong enough," he replied, his tone steady and sure. And as they stood there, wrapped in the warmth of forgiveness and hope, they knew the answer wasn't just for tonight. It was for every tomorrow that lay ahead. Whatever challenges awaited them, they would face them together, armed with the lessons of their past and the promise of a brighter future. The tide rolled in, erasing footprints in the sand behind them. A new chapter had begun, one written not with fear or regret, but with courage and love.